So recently, there has been an unfortunate terror attack in Delhi. Any thoughts or ideas that you have? You've spoken earlier about how there can be a legislative control on activities like terrorism.
Interestingly, I was a faculty for the delegates coming to the Indian Parliament sometime in the early 2000s. And I was called on a topic which said that legislative control on terror. And these were all international delegates to whom I was to give this talk. And I had that time propounded a theory that if you, by law, prohibit the publication of the name of the person and the organization which is involved in terror, then automatically terror will go down, because the purpose of terror is not to kill anybody. Purpose of terror is not to kill XYZ or to, do a particular thing in a particular manner. The purpose of terror is that the larger the blast, the more the publicity. When the Twin Towers fell in the US, it was probably the biggest news in our memory, in our entire life, in my life at least, I can say. So if you don't give them publicity that who did it and why did he do it, the purpose of doing the blast will be taken away. Now, there is also a very interesting side on this. The interesting side is that I was the special prosecutor for Abu Salim, and I used to go to Tisazari court for that trial. And I remember that every time Abu Salim used to be brought to court, there used to be 30, 40 cameras wanting to cover him, basically take him on the screen. Now, just imagine if any criminal who ultimately gets acquitted and who has already got this publicity becomes a launch pad for him to get into politics. So it's a very, very vicious cycle. Now you go back to the 26/11 attack. 26/11 attack, when the rescue operations were going on, and the security forces and this army and the paramilitary forces were NSG was handling the security then. They were airdropping people by helicopters into the building, and media people were carrying that live. Now, if you carry such an information live, and if the planners of the terror are also able to know that this kind of operation is going on, where the security people are entering through the roof, then they are forewarned. So why should all this be permitted to be telecast at all? Why should not there be any law to prohibit such kind of telecast? So interestingly, there is also a law today, for instance, in the women's right, where when you have a rape victim or a child victim, POSCO victim, law enjoins upon media to refrain from either publishing the photograph of the victim or the parentage or the name or the residence, etc. So if there is already a law of this kind, obviously it is already considered to be a reasonable restriction. Now, I don't understand what purpose are we serving by telecasting or permitting to be printed all over the name of the person who was involved in terror and the purpose for which he has done that terror. The moment you do that, his purpose is served. Now, if you take that objective completely away, and if you make by law mandatory that this will not be telecast under any circumstances, it will create a huge, disincentive to resort to terror. And that same law can also prohibit telecast of, operations going on to control terror, or to also ensure that people who are, in conflict with law, they should not be, their photographs and their video should not be taken. And that will serve a double salutary purpose. Many a times we see that the victims or the accused are actually victims, and they are, false cases are foisted upon them. So whether they are victims or whether they are actually hardcore criminals, both of them getting publicity is not in the larger interest. It is also their violation of their personal rights, their privacy rights. So that also should be banned. Ultimately, why do you want a gangster to get publicity during his trial and use that publicity for lack of evidence he is acquitted to become a member of parliament or a legislative assembly member? So this idea I had floated. I in fact even drafted a law. I remember Mr. Chidambaram was the home minister then. He saw that law. He prima facie, the person who showed him told me that yes, he was very impressed, but he did nothing about it. Thereafter, I wrote to the recent government also, to Mr. Modi and to Mr. Amit Shah. I don't think I wrote to Mr. Amit Shah, I think I wrote to Mr. Modi, also suggesting him this kind of a law, but nobody is interested in doing this. And I feel if this kind of a law is passed in India, and also if India takes this to the UN and makes it impresses upon the UN that this should be a law, a standard law should be passed by every country, then terror everywhere will go down. So ultimately, we are, by this permitting all this terror to happen, we are only giving the impetus to the the security industry and the weapons industry, etc. And ultimately, we are all living in threat. What has happened in Delhi recently is a very, very solemn occasion where we have to now really rethink on how best we can control terror, and actually ensuring that every citizen who is moving everywhere to check every bag, every car, it's next to impossible. And bringing in some dynamites and exploding it in a important area can create a huge havoc in the country today. So I think this can be a very, very good way to disincentivize people who resort to terror, because if they don't get the publicity, the purpose is not served. So that is why I feel that I think we should immediately implement this law or bring this law to the security agencies. They can do their investigation about the catching the culprits, etc. In any case, those investigations are not meant for the common man. So why give the details of these people who are indulging in terror to the common man? So that I think is a very important way which can be, by legislative control, we can do of terror in the world.
Thank you, sir.